What's up everyone, it's Kate here and welcome back to Marvelous Videos. Today we take a look at Mr. Miracle, the son of new god Highfather, who possessed the anti-life equation, origin explored. Denis Villeneuve's Dune is a modern sci-fi masterpiece. Frank Herbert specifically created his futuristic saga to not be adaptable for screen, and yet somehow Villeneuve has managed to do just that. Herbert's work has now been epitomized as possibly the best science fiction novel series of all time. God Emperor Leto Atreides the Second is our favourite depiction of a despondently cynical yet secretly benevolent god, whose plots have plots hidden within them, and whose ambition broke all of humanity, and rebuilt it in his image. But while Frank's sandworms and the Fremen from Arrakis are echoes of a period in time in humanity's history we cannot yet fathom or reach, Jack Kirby's Fourth World takes that premise and throws it back to the dawn of time. The King of Comics created some of the most seminal panels of his career when he attempted to make DC readers ponder the question, what came before existence itself, or at least as they knew it? The answer, of course, was the new gods, the pantheon of deities who existed at the beginning of the current DC universe, and are destined to perish with it when a new one arises to replace it. Darkseid is the most iconic Kirby creation of all time, so much so that he continues to be the primary antagonist for the JLA. But this video isn't about him, rather it'll discuss his former ward and captive. Mr. Miracle debuted in 1971 with his own eponymous series, and has gone on to become one of the most important new gods to emerge from Kirby's pantheon. He is also DC's version of Harry Houdini, if Houdini was immortal. Let's take a look at the son of the Highfather and the master of the Alpha effect. This is Mr. Miracle's origins explored. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
We make miracles.
Who is Mr. Miracle? Okay, twist in the plot. Mr. Miracle is actually a human. No, we're not kidding. Well, not entirely anyway. In the first issue of Mr. Miracle, we meet DC's Harry Houdini. Brown is an extraordinary escape artist capable of escaping any contraption conceivable. In fact, it was Brown who had taught the world's greatest detective all his tricks on escapology, as revealed in Detective Comics issues 996 and 997. He performed acts of escape that could only be described as miraculous, paving the way for him to become the first Mr. Miracle. He'd put on spectacular acts filled with inhumane ingenuity, making everyone believe that he was indeed capable of performing miracles. Sadly, it was this knack of his that would lead to his untimely demise. After getting into a foolish wager over the ultimate escape with Intergang Kappa regime Steel Hand, Thaddeus Brown found himself at a crossroad in his life. He was a proud man who would not go down without a fight, but Steel Hand had the resources to make sure the fight didn't last longer than the time it took for a bullet to pierce his skull. And indeed, that's what happened when a sniper hired by the evil Capo managed to take out Intergang's most obnoxious target. Unbeknownst to them, Brown had left behind a legacy that would come back to haunt them, their apocalyptic overlord. Shortly before he died, Brown had met a youth, a man no older than 30 it would seem, hale and hearty, and deathly interested in escapology. Thaddeus took him on as his protege and taught him everything he could about the art, alongside his trusted assistant Oberon. After a few weeks of training, and thanks to the man's mysteriously keen knack for escaping situations, Thaddeus Brown had finally found a successor for his legacy. Little did he know just how serious the effects of his actions would be for the DC continuity. You see, thousands of years ago when the old gods were destroyed during the event known as Ragnarok, there arose a line of new deities who were intended to replace them. These denizens of the Fourth World occupy two diametrically opposing home worlds, but they belong to the same race of celestial entities, now known to us as the New Gods. On one side was New Genesis, a utopic world that represented all the good in the multiverse. This world was ruled over by Isia, the Inheritor, the new god who became the voice of the Source and ascended to become Highfather of New Genesis. And on the other hand was the desolate industrial dystopia known as Apocalypse, ruled over by the mad tyrant known across the cosmos as Darkseid. Ages before he becomes an agent of the Source, Isia fought as a general in the war between New Genesis and Apocalypse and was left for dead by the master of the Omega Sanction. His future wife would nurse him back to health, and after having his eyes opened by the Source, Easier came to a decision that would create a permanent rift in his family. Millions had perished in the war between the new gods, and peace was a necessity. Metron realized in his divine omniscience that to attain this peace, an exchange of prisoners would need to take place. But these would be no ordinary prisoners. For a true peace between New Genesis and Apocalypse, something seismic had to occur, a change so drastic it would alter the course of their future. And so he brokered a deal between Darkseid and the Highfather. The two rulers would agree to end the bloodshed and exchange their heirs to seal the treaties. Darkseid's son would go on to become the noble Orion, a true defender of New Genesis and a person whom Easier thought of as family. As for the Highfather's son, his fate would be more, well, brutal. Darkseid consigned him to Granny Goodness's orphanage, which would be a death sentence for any mortal. Highfather's progeny grew up tortured and beaten into submission, though his spirit was so strong he might as well be eligible for the Green Lantern Corps. This boy had a way of escaping his bonds and exploring his uncle's doomed planet, only to be dragged back in for more punishment. Because of this habit, he was named scot-free by Granny Goodness. Granny has got puns aplenty. Though Scott was Highfather's son, he grew up unaware of his parentage, and would have become a mindless servant of Darkseid had Metron not prevented him from eating the mad tyrant's drugged-up food ration. Thanks to having a clearer mind than most of his minions, Scot-Free became a part of a resistance group on Apocalypse, led by his future mentor, Highman. It was during his time as a part of this group that he met his wife-to-be Big Barda, one of Darkseid's female Furies. Their opposing natures are what attracted them to each other, and Scott's compassion eventually transformed Barda to turn against their evil master. Eventually, Scot-Free found himself fleeing to the planet that was going on to become the center of the fifth world, Earth. After being transported to the 19th century by the boom tube, Free spent a century living as a mortal, and came to appreciate humanity with all its flaws. He eventually came across a circus performer and his assistant trying to practice a crazy escape stunt with a flamethrower. Scott tried to stop the old man from killing himself, but to his surprise, he emerged unscathed. Yep, you guessed it folks, the man who became Thaddeus Brand's escapology protege, successor, and eventually Avenger is the son of Highfather, the new god known as Scot-Free, aka Mr. Miracle. After bringing Steelhand to justice, Scot-Free decided to stay on Earth and face his fate, alongside its greatest heroes.
O ye of little faith.
Mr. Miracle Various Story Arcs. The first volume of Mr. Miracle dealt entirely with the Fourth World and the new gods populating it. Mr. Miracle Issue 2 introduced the right-hand woman and torturer-in-chief of Darkseid and Granny Goodness herself. Arriving just outside the orbit of Earth, Goodness was there to take her protege back for an important lesson. Thanks to his followers' robot and escapology tactics, he was able to get away from Granny Goodness. She would respond by attacking Mr. Miracle with the aid of Bedlam and his inhabited artificial animates, but this scheme too would be foiled by Scott with the help of Big Barda's sisters, the female Furies. Scott decides he has to put an end to things and bargains with Kanto to win his own freedom via trial by combat. Scot-Free emerges truly embodying his title as the god of freedom and escape after this experience, defeating the lump by showing its own visage. After gaining his freedom, Mr. Miracle would go on to team up with the Justice League in the aftermath of the Apocalypse War. His first official team up with the League saw him go up against a rogue artificial intelligence construct created by Metron. His second outing would be more memorable, simply because it would play more into his territory. The galactic entrepreneur Manga Khan came to Earth, hoping to do business with its leaders, or blow it up with his cluster. Instead, he found himself retreating from the Justice League, but not without a prize. Mr. Miracle was stuck on board, and after realizing his lineage, Khan decided to trade him off to Darkseid. To his anger, the Dark God wanted nothing to do with his former ward, and it earned him Manga Khan's undying enmity. He declared war on Apocalypse, and it took Darkseid's direct intervention to stop him. After a while, he became a semi-retired hero with Barda, living in Bailey, New Hampshire as the owners of the Freeze Fix-It shop. It's around this time that they took Sheila Norman into their wing, the boy who would go on to become the future Mr. Miracle. Though his superpowers don't do much justice to his place in the DC continuity as they should, there is one story that shows you just how intricately linked Mr. Miracle is to the DCU. During the events of Orion issue 25, a flashback revealed that Scott Free possessed the very thing that Apocalypse's Mad Tyrant was looking for. On one of his namesake outings to Armageddon, Scott came across Darkseid's canine soldiers, the Hungry Dogs. Overcome with fear, anxiousness, and pent-up rage at his conditions, he closed his eyes and screamed "Stop!" When he opened them hours later, he realized it was part of a nightmare. Everything around him was dead. Scott Free possessed the anti-life equation, the very object of Darkseid's obsessive destruction, and the trauma of using it to kill broke him. He didn't speak for months after that, using Granny Goodness's torture as a means to perfect his control over his emotions, and therefore the anti-life equation. This power of his was the centerpiece of the Death of the New Gods storyline, which saw many of the New Gods, including Mr. Miracle's wife Big Barda, lose their lives to a mysterious killer. A darker Mr. Miracle joins Superman's investigation and uses the anti-life equation to interrogate the spirits of the Forever People. Eventually, he discovers the murderer is Infinity Man, who is working as an agent of the Source. The Source has been splintered into two halves during its war with the Old Ones, one of which took the manifestation of anti-life in the multiverse. Having deemed the Fourth World a failure, it now wished to merge with its other half and bring about the genesis of the Fifth World. Broken by the knowledge that he had violated all of his oaths for nothing, Mr. Miracle requests that the Source kill him, which it gladly does. The Source also kills Metron and then goes on to defeat Darkseid, leading to the events of Final Crisis. While his backstory has never been absent, it was properly fleshed out during the New 52, which also saw Mr. Miracle become the host for the Black Racer for a very brief period of time. After being brought back to life, he goes straight after his tormentor, and becomes a key figure in the Justice League Darkseid War crossover event. He's almost apprehended by the Mad Tyrant, trying to steal confidential files, but he boom tubes away at just the right time. He's able to keep himself safe from Darkseid's minions for a while, but, and we cannot believe we're saying this, he soon has bigger problems to worry about. After killing Darkseid, Mobius, aka the Anti-Monitor, turns his sights towards destroying all positive life, a fact revealed to Mr. Miracle by a teary-eyed Ultraman. After taking care of that little problem, Scott would be faced with a domestic dilemma. After Darkseid's death and Lex Luthor's subsequent acquisition of the Omega Sanction, Apocalypse was a mess. Barda was going to return to her homeworld and help protect it from both of the aforementioned control freaks, or God forbid, something even worse. Speaking of which. What makes Mr. Miracle so powerful? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call Mr. Miracle one of the strongest characters in DC, and yes, we mean that seriously. Scott Free is a new god and possesses the same basic genealogy as Darkseid, Highfather, Metron, and all of the new gods. That already makes him immortal and immensely powerful. Seriously, he can shatter metal doors with his bare hands and has the reflexes of 1,000,000 cats combined. It's insane. Besides being inhumane, agile, durable, and practically invulnerable to all kinds of damage, he is also one of the most dexterous DC characters and can probably give a ragdoll a run for his money. He's also immune to most toxins and possesses an intellect far beyond that of mankind, which he uses in conjunction with his mother box to perform feats of miraculous escape, for kicks and the fate of the universe. The mother box is like an all-purpose supercomputer that's the basis of most of his information. He also carries around lots of tools: electronic picks, test dummies, suction cups, concussion bombs, everything that he might need in order to make a speedy escape, all concealed within hidden pockets of his costume. His costume is made out of a special material that negates most damage, while his cape is created from a memory fibroid that can turn into a one-off super shield if he wants it to. He has used his mother box to create multi-cube, which he can use as recorders, holograph projectors, and sonic bombs to stun his enemies. Scott Free modified his aerodiscs to serve beyond their base function of flight. He can use them as weapons freely, without worrying about any malfunctions. Of course, he is unparalleled at escapology, which means that even if you left him inside of a concrete box, he'd probably find a way out of it. But his real strengths come from his divine heritage. Mr. Miracle was the former possessor of the Alpha Effect, the direct antithesis of Darkseid's Omega effect, capable of manipulating emotions, enforcing peace, healing all injuries, resurrecting people, and bending space-time itself. He gave it up willingly when he left his home world. His second, and arguably more dangerous power, is his knowledge of the anti-life equation. Scot-free could subjugate the entire population of the multiverse into being his mindless slaves, if he wanted to. It's literally Darkseid's last unchecked bucket list item, for the most part anyway. With the anti-life equation, Mr. Miracle would hold complete control over a being's consciousness, making him the ruler of all creation in essence.
No, you're the liar. There's always hope.
Mr. Miracle in DCAU. Despite being such an interesting character, Mr. Miracle has been underrepresented, especially in the adapted media. Scot-free has mostly been a background filler for the DC animated universe. He had a short cameo in Superman the Animated Series episode Apocalypse Now, Part 2 as a new god who arrived on Earth to help take down Darkseid. He appeared as a picture in the futuristic Batman Beyond series, and also appeared at the tail end of the Justice League episode Twilight Part 2. His first proper animated appearance was in Justice League Unlimited, in the episode titled The Ties That Bind. It's a near-direct adaptation of the first volume of Mr. Miracle, and sees Granny Goodness kidnap Oberon in an effort to get Scott to free Calabac from imprisonment in the X-Pit. Even though the entire layout of the place has changed, Scot-free is Mr. Miracle, and he manages to accomplish his task and defeats both Goodness and Veerman Wunderbar, and gets away with his friends unharmed. Mr. Miracle has also appeared in the Justice League action episode It'll Take a Miracle, where he tricks Darkseid into thinking he has the anti-life equation in order to save his wife Barda.
Dad, it's great to see you. You look good. Have you been working out? Your chest feels...
Why Mr. Miracle deserves your recognition. Granted, to be a superhero literally based off a circus act seems ridiculous at first, but if it weren't for circuses, we wouldn't have one half of the dynamic duo today. Most people might cite Darkseid as the most significant contribution that Jack Kirby made to comic book history, but we'd argue it's actually Mr. Miracle. For the 3 short years he spent with DC, Kirby only began one solo title, and it was this one. Scot-free has gone on to achieve cult status thanks to the revelation of his deeply tragic backstory and his equally scary darker side. Of all the colourful creations to spring forth from Kirby's boundless imagination, Mr. Miracle is definitely the most unique. He's a reminder of a bygone era of comic books, and a bridge to a new dawn for DC Comics as a whole. And if we're being honest, he just has some of the coolest panels we've ever seen. Just read the first issue of Mr. Miracle and you'll see what we're talking about. That's it for this video. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
And that's what we call entertainment!